Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JT Talks Jobs, the show that teaches you everything you need to know about job search and career growth because school taught you everything except how to get the job. My name is JT O'Donnell. I'm the founder of Work It Daily, and today we're going to be talking about how to improve your career narrative. Many of you probably don't even know what a career narrative is, so we're certainly going to define that. But what I want you to think about is that if you could rewrite your career story in a way that made you feel more empowered, more positive, and got you better results, would you do it? If the answer is yes, then this is definitely the episode for you. So before we get started, just want to remind you to always follow the hashtag JT Talks Jobs on whatever platform you're on. You know that we hashtag all of our content. If you follow us on sites like LinkedIn, for example, you'll get all the latest updates on our info, as well as all of the recordings of our live sessions. Also, be sure to follow us, whether it's on LinkedIn or YouTube or one of our other channels. That's another way to ensure that you're going to get timely job search and career content where you want it most. And lastly, just want to remind you about our exciting new podcast. We are now on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and all the other popular podcast sites. It's called JT Talks Jobs, and we are so excited about it. And again, a big shout out to my team that made that a reality for me. That's like a big dream that we have the JT Talks Jobs podcast. So be sure to go over and check that out as well. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, I want to get right down to the business of talking about your career narrative. This is a subject that I particularly love. It's something that I've coached people on for many years, especially when I learned about its power for my own career. So we're going to talk about improving your career narrative. But in order to do that, I first have to define what is a career narrative. So here's the thing. Think about your favorite major motion picture, right? Or the best book you've ever read. Maybe you want to share that with us in the comment section. Now imagine that story playing over and over and over again in your head. It probably has, right? Sometimes you daydream about those movies or those books. Well, your career narrative is nothing more than a major motion picture or a book, that epic novel in your head about your career. We all have them and we all create them. Don't believe me? Well, I'm going to test you. Right now, I want you to answer this question for me. Do you right now have a job, a career, or a calling? Let me say it again. Right now, when you think about work, do you have a job? The thing that you go to, but it's not really satisfying. It's just a job. Do you have a career? Something you feel that you've strategically put together in some way and have controlled its outcome and it's giving you some sense of satisfaction? Or do you have a calling? Do you have the thing that you know that you were born to do? Everything is aligned and you know that you are creating value on your own terms and you feel satisfied every single day with the work that you do. Job, career, or calling? Think about that for a minute. And if you want to share in the comments, we'd love to see your feedback. Whichever one of those you choose will tell me about the level of your career narrative. I'm going to tell you that people that follow a calling, those are individuals that have one of the richest, most positive, Technicolor career narratives you've ever seen. If they were to share their story with you, it would be filled with these amazing twists and turns with this incredibly powerful ending. And you would feel how excited and proud they were about their career. Whereas if I was to listen to the career narrative of somebody who has a career, I would hear some basic highlights of success, things that they were proud of. But all in all, it still wouldn't be epic. It would be okay. And if I was to ask the person that says they have just a job, well, now we're talking about a story that would probably be more on the sad side, not really exciting, doesn't have a happy ending, probably even, I hate to say it, a little depressing. That's your career narrative, folks. Your simple answer to that question already tells me a boatload about how powerful your career narrative is and how much room we have to improve it. And today I'm going to talk about why you want to improve it as well as how to improve it. So first thing I want to share 4 things you need to understand, sort of the basic foundations of a career narrative. You need to know that number 1, a career narrative has evolved. Our career narratives as a whole, as a society, have deeply evolved. And I'm going to give you an example of that. 50, 60 years ago, career narratives that were highly successful or highly satisfying were the ones that told the story of somebody who actually went to college and was the first person in their family to get a degree and went on to have a great job at a company where they lasted there 20 years. And at the retirement time, there was a gold watch and there was a pension and there was a party for them. Fast forward to about 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, I graduated from college. And back then it was Lots of people were graduating with degrees. That wasn't anything novel. You were trying to go to the best college that you could go to be competitive. And then it was all about climbing the ladder. And, for me as a woman, breaking the glass ceiling and all those other things that were very popular at the time that made the career narrative more exciting, more compelling. Now, fast forward even more to today, where everybody goes to college. It's not really normal or special anymore. And everyone is now thinking about the only way to be successful is if you own your own business and if you are really successful at a young age. So I tell you this because over time, society has shifted the basics of career narrative and they have manipulated, and I'm going to use that word, manipulated many people to make their career narrative less of a success than it is, or negative, or just not where it could be, because we're comparing ourselves to these outdated mindsets. We're comparing ourselves to what society says is the definition of a good career path. And that's one of the things that you really have to understand is how much pressure society has put on us to have these major motion picture, epic novel type career narratives that support them, that speak to what they want to see people do. And this is why, folks, we have such an incredibly high level of career dissatisfaction. More than 70% of people today say they're not satisfied with their careers. So what does that tell you? It tells you that we're trying to impress all the wrong people. We're trying to build career narratives to impress others around us, when in reality, the only person your career narrative should ever impress is yourself. But that's easier said than done. Right? We're surrounded by pressure, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. The second thing I want you to know is that career narratives are highly subjective. Again, no two people tell a career narrative in the same way. In fact, this is fascinating. If I was to take two people and they had the exact same set of events in their career, and then I asked them to write those set of events out into their career narrative or their career story, I would get two different stories, because they're two different people who believe different things, who value different things, who have had different life experiences, different influences. And that's what makes the story so subjective. Again, no two people have the same career narrative, and it's not objective. It's not fact-based. We are humans. Our brains are designed to take every experience we have in our life and codify it as positive or negative. Well, the moment you decide that something that happened to you is positive or negative, it's now turned a corner in your narrative. And there can be one person who sees something as a good experience and the other person sees it as a bad experience. So this is what I mean about career narratives being so incredibly subjective. The third thing you need to know is that career narratives directly impact your level of happiness, which I've already alluded to. The happier you are with your career narrative, the more positive the overall career narrative is, the happier you are in life. We spend about 1/3 of our day at our jobs. Our jobs define us, whether we like it or not. And society has made us believe that what we do every minute that we work, if it's not really fulfilling in some way, then we are not fulfilling our destiny. So if that's the basis, then you can imagine how directly our career narratives impact our overall happiness in life. If we had a bad day at work, we end up having a bad day at life. And so that's why we need to be careful about how we write and define our career narratives, because they so deeply impact our overall happiness. And the fourth thing I want you to know about your career narrative is that it's always changing. And I think that's actually the good news and why I ended with that number 4, because you can change it. And that's what we're talking about today. If it is so subjective, and if it's up to you to impress yourself with your career narrative, then know that it is completely within your power to rewrite your career narrative at any time. And people will say to me, but wait a minute, JT, whatever's happened to me has happened to me. I can't change that. Oh, yes, you can. You absolutely can change how you interpret every experience you've ever had. And when you learn to change your narrative, when you learn to change how you interpret those experiences, you get incredible power to take control and open up all sorts of opportunities for yourself that you couldn't have otherwise. And so that's what we're going to look at next. So let's just start, and everyone say this together, that you are in control of your career narrative at all times. Nobody is writing this narrative for you. Society has pressured you, but you are still the one that has written the narrative that is currently running in autopilot in your head. You design that narrative, which means that you have 100% of the authority and control to change it. All you have to do is stop letting the outside influences in and really dial in and look at what you want, and then tell the story in a way that serves you best. So let's talk about the steps to do that. Step number one is to write out your career narrative. So writing out your career narrative can take a while. In fact, last year, I did a class with all the Work It Daily members. It was a 3-week class that we did. It was part of a New Year's resolution program. And every day we had people take a step in the program. In fact, if you join Work It Daily today, that course is still there and you can go take it on demand. It was one of our highest attended live training sessions ever. And one of the steps, obviously, was for everybody to write out their career narrative. And I think the highest one, I remember a woman came to me and hers ended up being 56 pages long. Now, I don't think you're all going to have a 56-page long career narrative. But for her, she took it so seriously. She said, I'm going to look back and I'm going to so deeply write out everything that I remember from my earliest memory that I think ties to my career through today. I'm just going to brain dump it all out. And it's really important that you do this. Again, I don't need 56 pages, but you're going to definitely have more than one or two. And the more detail that you pull out of your mind and take yourself off autopilot and look at it, the more you're going to realize, wow, this really is subjective. This really is unique and personal to me. And that I have made a lot of assumptions and I've interpreted a lot of experiences in my life in order to develop this narrative. So it's a very cathartic process to write out your career narrative. It's so important that you do it. You may think, but JT, it's in my head. I can just think about it. Oh no, let me tell you something. When you take the time to write it out, you're going to then put it away, sleep on it, go back and read it to yourself. And when you read it to yourself that next time, you're going to go, wait a minute, but this is missing and this is missing. And you're going to fill that all in and you're going to put it away again. And you're going to take it out after you sleep on it and you're going to find even more. And slowly you're going to rewrite it and reorganize it. I mean, you'll go in one day and go, gosh, I think I don't have this in the right order. Things are out of sequence. Your brain is all sorts of messed up right now. That story, that major motion picture, that epic novel, it's actually not very well written. And it's because you just keep throwing stuff at it. You just keep adding to it without any sense of organization. Really good storytellers, they have an outline. They have an order in which they tell the events. They make sure that everything connects, that it flows, that it makes sense. That is not happening in your brain right now. And that is part of the reason that you are so unhappy, because your brain is flipping around from place to place to place and in a state of confusion. The process of writing out your career narrative and editing it and editing it and editing it until it truly is in order and feels right to you is incredible mental clarity. You're giving us the foundation from which we can start to really clean up the story, make the necessary changes, and get it to a place that really heightens your sense of satisfaction with your career. We can't do that until you write it out. So the second step in the process is to then circle all the positive and negative events. So you go through the document, and anytime you make a statement that is positive, it was a good outcome, something you were happy with, you circle that, let's say, with a green pen. And everything that's negative, where you saw it as a setback or a failure or a problem or somebody didn't treat you right, you circle that as a negative. And then the other statements are just neutral. If you even want to have a third color, you can have a third color for neutral statements. They're not positive or negative. The reason for this is that you really need to add it up at the end and decide what percentage of your overall career narrative is positive, neutral, or negative. If your career narrative has more than 30% negative, there is so much room for improvement, you wouldn't believe it. Now, I'm not one of those optimists that says, wow, your career narrative has to be nothing but positive. That's not possible. You can't sit there and lie. There are some things that are just, they are what they are. Okay. I prefer to say that things aren't negative, that they're powerful, right? They had a powerful impact. And more importantly, I think a lot of times you can take things from negative to neutral. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in a minute. So neutralizing negative statements is creating more objectivity. And this is probably one of the most important concepts that I can teach people inside Work It Daily. Learning how to take negative thoughts and rewrite them into neutral thoughts is deeply powerful. And this isn't, me just making this up. This is actual brain science. It's called neuro-linguistic programming. So we have enough research and studies to show now that negative thoughts directly impact us. And studies show that negative thoughts are 4 to 7 times more powerful on our bodies, our mental and our physical health than positive statements. So just thinking negatively is already bad for us. More evidence has come out to support that when we actually articulate negative things, when we say negative things have happened to us, when we interpret things negatively and we articulate them, makes it 10 times more powerful. So now all of a sudden, those negative statements we're thinking that we now say out loud are 40 to 70 times more powerful than a positive statement. So you can see why it's so important that you take a close look at your narrative and say, if it's more than 30% negative, I've got to do something to neutralize as many of those statements as I can. Now, one of the ways that you neutralize them is you take a look at the statement and say, am I attaching emotion to this because of my expectations? Did I feel I deserved something there? Did I feel my expectations weren't met? Did I feel like it was supposed to be fair and it wasn't? Because these are the things that will create, right? When we have loss, that can create those negative emotions. And so you have to be honest with yourself and say, I'm making some assumptions about what I'm entitled to in that moment. And that's what's causing that very negative statement. So and it's not an easy thing to do. I'm not going to say it's very difficult, but I understand this idea of going negative to neutral can seem really foreign to people. I will tell you that the more you do it and the more help you get with it, the better. It's a big part of what we as coaches do inside Work It Daily, right? People will come in and they will tell us parts of their career narrative and we'll say, wait a minute now, you're saying this was a bad thing. Why do you think it was a bad thing? You're making some assumptions here. How about we make this a neutral statement? And the more we're able to get them to objectively see and be more neutral about what happened to them, the more power they give themselves. And that's really the key here. We're trying to empower you. So now step 4, once you've rewritten the negative statements to neutral, you now have an overall stronger career narrative, but it's not committed to memory. We're talking months, years, maybe even decades of negative self-talk that has been on autopilot in your brain. Your brain's naturally going to want to go to that. Remember, our ancient brain is all about protecting ourselves. So it's always trying to codify things as positive or negative, not necessarily neutral. And so you are going to have to condition your brain to stop thinking those negative thoughts. So you're going to want to read this new, really revamped career narrative over and over to yourself every day, until you hear that story so many times, you hear yourself saying the neutral statements and the positive statements so many times that you actually feel that way. You'll know, I'll tell you, you'll know eventually when you do this enough and you condition yourself enough. It's like exercise, folks, right? The first couple times we exercise, we're sore, right? Our muscles are a little sore, we're stiff, it's awkward, it doesn't feel natural. But then if we do it on a consistent basis, we get stronger, we don't think about it anymore, and we feel better. Well, it is no different when it comes to your career narrative. In the beginning, it's going to feel awkward. You're still going to have some anxiety. You're still going to doubt what you're saying in the narrative. But if you read it to yourself enough, especially out loud, over and over time, you will release the negative mindset because you will finally condition it out of you. And I'm not making this up. If you talk to all of the most successful people, right? Very high profile successful people, they will tell you that for a very long time, they've been taking ownership of their brain and they have not been allowing those negative thoughts in. And when they do get those negative thoughts, because we all do, because we're human, they recognize when they're feeling off and they tackle them. They tackle those negative thoughts and they tear them apart until they're neutral. And when they're neutral, they're not expending emotional energy on them. And they're giving themselves back more energy to put towards positive pursuits, to put towards making things happen in their life. When you carry around a career narrative in your head that is full of negativity, each nugget of negativity is like a rock. And if you have enough of those rocks in your head, you are just weighing yourself down. So one of the things that people hear me say a lot inside Work It Daily is drop the rocks. The more rocks you can drop, the more negativity you can let go and turn into neutral, the lighter you get. And the lighter you get, the more energy you have to go forth and make things happen for yourself. So very important that we just keep saying these over and over again until we're able to release that negativity and drop the rocks. All right. I have a couple of tips for you. Now that I've shown you sort of the high level of how to do this, and I'm going to definitely take some questions on this in a minute, I always have a couple tips. Tip number 1 is own all your actions. If you're really going to do this well, understand that where you are today, everything that's happened in your life, you need to own it. You made decisions based on the information you had at the time. Don't beat yourself up. Don't say that you were a failure. Don't be a victim. When we have a victim mentality, we're saying that we were helpless. And when we're helpless, we're hopeless. This is not a way to be. Say, look, I made decisions at the time based on where I was, what I knew. Turns out those decisions weren't the best ones. Can't change that now, but I can learn from them. I can grow from them. I'm wise enough to recognize it. Pat yourself on the back. You're putting yourself out there and you're learning and you're growing. Don't be a victim. Own every action. It's so empowering. That's how superheroes are. They own everything. It's so funny. You own everything that happens, but you don't take blame. Does that make sense? There's a difference between owning and taking the blame. There's a difference between owning and saying, I failed and, I'm a bad person. That's not the case. You're just owning that these things happened and that you made decisions. That's it, right? Don't beat yourself up. When you own, you empower, and that's the key. And then the second tip is to eliminate all expectations. I mentioned that earlier. Most of our sadness, our fears, our perception of failure, the reasons that we're hard on ourselves, our anger, our frustration, all negative emotions essentially are tied to expectation. Think about it. Think about the last time you're really upset about something. It's because your expectations weren't met. So remember this, we don't deserve or not deserve anything. We're not entitled or not entitled to anything. If you don't have any expectations, if you don't think you're entitled, if you don't think you deserve, you'll never be disappointed. And by the same token, if something happens to you, you're not going to label it as, well, I don't deserve that, or I'm not entitled to that. It's not about entitled or not entitled, deserve or don't deserve. It is what it is. You have what you have. You can enjoy it and be grateful that you have it, but don't attach meaning to anything. For example, I got where I am today because I'm good. So if something bad happens, does that mean you're bad? See how you've set expectations and deserve? You've tied it to deserve? No, if you got where you are today, awesome. You made some choices and they panned out. Great. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to avoid things later that don't have as good an outcome or aren't as great for you. But the moment you stop putting this pressure on yourself, you will be so much happier. And that's really what you're doing. When you set expectations, you are self-imposing pressure. So stop expecting anything. It's that go with the flow attitude. Work with what you've got, with what's in front of you, make the best of it. That's what you need to do. Okay. So there you have it. Steps to rewriting your career narrative, elevating your career happiness. If you would like a more detailed version of how to do that, I encourage you to go over and check out Work It Daily. As you know, we have so many online courses. You can drop in and take any of them, all of them at any time, 24/7 access. You can work with our career coaches every step of the way. You have your own private tutors inside our platform. So if this made sense to you and you'd really like to break it down and do a little bit every day, right? Work It Daily. Then go over to Work It Daily, sign up for one of our membership programs, get instant access to the career narrative class. I promise you, the career reinvention is a powerful experience and a skill that everyone should learn to do. Because when you learn to analyze and improve your career narrative, you unlock your future. Now you can write the story of the future and you can go after it. Now you can recognize and interpret future events differently than you would have before, but not until you've really been through this process. So if you've never taken yourself through this process before, at the very least, follow the steps that I gave you today because it is so worth it. It is a truly cathartic experience and will make you stronger and better and give you more options as you go forward to grow your career. All right. So there we have it. I'm going to take some questions now from everybody. Very, very excited. So first question of the day is, how do you turn a negative part of your career narrative, say getting fired or laid off, into a positive, or should you leave it out altogether? No, don't leave it out. I'm glad you asked that question. I don't want you to leave out something that happened. I mean, that's a fact. You got laid off. You got fired. Okay. But as I said, it's not a negative experience. It's a powerful one. So the first thing I want you to do is say, what are all the things that I learned as a result of getting fired or laid off? What are all the things that I've learned? And secondly, knowing what I know now, if I could have gone back and changed something that I did, what would I do differently? If this was ever to start to, if I saw the signs of the same thing coming up again, How would I approach it differently? What would I do? That's what I mean about owning actions. You can't change what happened, but you sure as heck can use it. Use it for power in your story, not for negative. In fact, we have an entire class inside Work It Daily called Fired to Hired, where we specifically teach people how to work through that. And one of the first things we have you work through is how to answer the question, why did you get let go? And I'll tell you, there's a whole series of things that you need to say in order for a hiring manager to really believe you. But the first thing I'll tell you is to always start with, that's a great question. And it was a powerful experience. Because the last thing they're expecting for you to say is that's a great question, right? What they're expecting you to do is cower away, try to defend it, try to blame. But when you open with, that's a great question, I'm glad you asked it, and it was a powerful experience, not a negative one, you're changing the mindset of the person that's listening. Right now, you've disrupted their whole pattern of thinking because they have some assumptions that you're going to start to react in a certain way. And when you don't, now you've got their attention. Now everything you say after that becomes even more powerful. And this is what I mean about a strong career narrative. So don't take those out. Those are precious gems. A lot of times it's the stuff that was powerful and hard and gritty and difficult that is the most beneficial to us in our career. And that's how you have to view it. Okay, next question is, in the medical field, let's try this again. I'm in the medical field and trying to transition out now. It's difficult. Instead of trying to fit to the job we want, would it be best to make sacrifices to build a digital business and do something we love? So this idea of pivoting our career story, right, our career narrative into a new direction, you can't do that without some idea of where you want it to go. So I don't suggest just starting a digital business because you think you can. I think you need to step back and say, remember what I asked in the beginning, do you have a job, a career, or a calling? I personally believe that in different times of our lives, sometimes it's easier to be in a job because we've got other things going on in our life. Sometimes it's easier to be in just a career where, there's some sense of satisfaction, but again, we're doing other things in our life. And then sometimes it's all about a calling where it is our life. It is a big part of our life. So you have to decide where you fall in that and then make decisions about where to pivot your career based on that. So let me give you an example. I know a lot of Olympic athletes that will work at a place like Home Depot or Lowe's because of the flexibility of their schedule. So that's a job to them. It's a means to an end. They are pursuing, their calling, which is to be in the Olympics, to be an athlete. I know people who have careers where they're making a good living and they're really doing it because they have a family to provide for and to live a good life, but they're also happy because at least the work they do, they enjoy most of the time. And then I know people where their work is just who they are. It's just what they've become, and that their work has made every other aspect of their life better because they've been able to align it or create what's called a state of flow. Now, calling is very difficult to achieve, and it requires an incredible amount of focus and candidly discipline and sacrifice. Anybody that really has a calling has given up so much more because to get there, they had to let go of what other people thought. They had to let go of any expectations that they had. A lot of times they had to let go of financial means. Maybe on the other side of it, maybe they're very successful, but in the beginning they weren't. They had to put in an incredible amount of hours and probably let some areas of their life temporarily sacrifice as a result. But in order to get those results, they were all in, they were committed. I don't think there are a lot of people out there that have the tenacity to go after their calling. Majority of people I know are pretty happy when they finally get to a career that's satisfying to them. So I say this to you because you have to decide, what are you going for? And then what does that look like? And there are a whole bunch of steps you have to take after that in terms of self-assessment. I would not just start a business. I would not just pivot until you've done some really deep self-assessment. To give you an idea, we have a professional strengths assessment course inside Work It Daily that studies you in 9 different areas. 9 different areas in order for you to get a comprehensive 360 view of who you are as a professional so you can start to narrow down the choices. If you haven't done that level of research, then you can't just make that pivot. And again, as we've learned today, if you want an amazing career narrative, you've got to put some energy and thought into what you want it to look like in the future and what steps you're going to take to get there. You have to decide what the next chapters of the book are going to be. That's how you take control and really get the results you're looking for. Okay, question is, I've been told that after COVID-19, the interview question I should ask hiring managers is, how did your company handle COVID-19? Is this an appropriate question? This is absolutely an appropriate question. When a company tells you what happened to them when they went through COVID-19, how they handled it, and the outcomes, you're going to learn a lot about their leadership team, their priorities, their culture, all of those things that are going to have an impact on what you think about when you go to work for them. So you absolutely can answer that question, or ask that question, I should say. The one thing I'll tell you though, is you want to be really careful in how you ask it, because it's very personal and very revealing. And if the company feels in any way that you're being a bit antagonistic or prying a bit too much, it'll work against you. So my advice, instead of saying, how did you handle COVID-19, right? Feels very antagonistic. I might say something more like, tell me about COVID-19. How did it impact your business? What was it like here? What were the outcomes? I would also ask questions like, what did your company learn from COVID-19? And has anything changed in the business and how you recruit, how you are building the business as a result of what you learned from COVID-19, right? So I think there are more positive ways to frame and ask questions around how they executed on COVID-19. Also, you're going to be able to do a lot of research on your own, right? There'll be a lot of information posted on sites like Glassdoor and Indeed that will help you understand. But as far as asking the question, just make sure you frame it in a way that doesn't sound too aggressive. Okay, what do you recommend when you are stuck in defining what you really want to do or uncertain about what you're best at? For me, it's assessment. It's self-assessment. I started my career coaching practice. I left corporate America 2001, became a certified coach 2002, and very quickly built a strengths assessment. It became sort of the foundation of my practice because I couldn't work with people unless I deeply understood who they were and what they wanted. And that was probably the most common thing people came to me for in one-on-one sessions is, I don't know what I want to do next. I'm not happy, but I don't know what I want to do next. So the engineer in me went and built a whole set of tools. And I would have people take this very comprehensive set of assessment tools, send them to me, and I was able to interpret their results and help them start to narrow their focus. I've since taken all of those tools and then some, right, over all these years and turned them into a course inside Work It Daily. So my advice is you need to do some serious introspection, do a lot of assessment. Now, people will say, wait a minute, I don't want to be labeled. It's not labeling. Assessment is not labeling. Assessment doesn't mean this is what you'll be for the rest of your life. It's a baseline state of knowledge for you to understand who you are, what your preferences are, what your strengths are, and how those work together or don't work together, because our strengths create our weaknesses. And unfortunately, this is not something they teach us in school. I guarantee nobody listening to this today had deep self-assessment done that helped you narrow it down and literally validate possible career options for you. Didn't do it in high school, didn't do it in college. It's ridiculous. I don't know why we're not teaching this stuff, but we're not. So we have to do it for ourselves, because if we want to get ahead, the more laser focus you have on what you're good at and what would interest you, the much easier it's going to be to develop a career path that excites you. But you have to do the self-assessment. You have to do the deep dive into yourself so that you can really put those blinders on and get locked into the things that will give you the highest level of satisfaction. Do you really think it is necessary to eliminate extractions from life? I do believe expectations engage us to be successful. Let's read this again. Okay. Do you really think it is necessary to eliminate expectations from life? I do believe expectations engage us to be successful. Yeah. I just don't think that most people know how to manage their expectations properly. You can set goals. I think a goal is a wonderful thing to have, right? You want to focus, you want to have a goal, because you're at the starting line, you want to know where the finish line is. But expectations about what you think you deserve and what should happen because you do a certain thing, that's where the trouble gets. So having goals is one thing, but having too many expectations about what you think you deserve or don't deserve because, well, I did this and other people did it and they got this and I didn't, it's not fair. Life isn't fair. Let's talk about the fact that hiring is discrimination. So for you to make assumptions and have expectations and think that you deserve things, that's where the problems arise. So have goals. Absolutely have goals. Strive to achieve things. Go after your dreams, but don't be disappointed when everything doesn't turn out the way you thought it would, because that's where the trouble lies. And the more you can let go of expectations, the happier you will be. That much I can promise you. Okay, question is, should I wait till the market picks back up before I start job searching again? Oh my gosh, no. Please no. If there is one thing I can convince people of right now is you do not wait. You do not wait. So right now we have a lot of hiring freezes going on. Hiring is dramatically slowed down. So a lot of people are angry about that and thinking there's nothing I can do. There is a heck of a lot you can do right now. First of all, is your resume in good shape? Is it current? Is it 6-second worthy? Would it pass the 6-second recruiter test? Because recruiters are skimmers. If not, you focus on that. Secondly, is your LinkedIn profile keyword optimized? Over 700 million people on LinkedIn. Lots of people are going to be looking for work. How do you show up in the keyword results? How do you get to the top of the search results of recruiters? Third, do you have a bucket list of employers that you have researched, that you know hire for your skill set, that you admire what they do, that you would want to get up every day and go work there because of the products they or the services they provide, the products, the customers they serve? What is it? What emotional connection do you have to these companies so you can really sell yourself to them? Do you have disruptive cover letters written? Do you know how to get an employer's attention at hello? These are all skills that can be developed right now. Interview prep. Do you know how hard it's going to be when people are competing? Do you know how to stand out in an interview? Do you know how to validate your experience without sounding like you're bragging? These are all skill sets that the majority of people don't have because they don't teach this in school. This is all part of job search. If you want to execute an amazing job search, you absolutely positively have to have all of these things in place, and you need to have some level of skill in all of them so that you can execute efficiently. And oh, by the way, let's talk about networking. Right now, everybody should be networking. They should be connecting online, reaching out to old colleagues, introducing themselves to people at the companies they'd like to work for. Now is the time to expand your network so that when they start posting jobs again, you can actually reach out to people. That's because 80% of all jobs are gotten via networking. Less than 3% of people that apply online ever get called for an interview. Applicant tracking systems are literally designed to screen you out. So you have to know how to go around the applicant tracking system and get your resume pulled from the pile. And that's done through networking. Again, all of which should be done now before companies post jobs. When a company posts a job, it's too little too late. You can't start networking then. All the people that already put their network in play are the ones that are getting their resume looked at. So now is the time to literally ratchet up the job search, big time, folks. And you have to motivate yourself. And I tell people, look, 5 minutes a day. There's a reason the company is called Work It Daily. There is this concept that they teach you to do. They call it the Pomodoro principle or the Pomodoro technique. And it has to do with a Pomodoro timer. But basically, grab your phone, set it for 5 minutes, grab your timer, set it for 5 minutes, and sit down and say, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on my job search today. And I promise you, at the end of 5 minutes, you'll either stop and go, okay, I did 5 minutes, or you'll go, wow, this isn't so bad. I can spend 10 minutes. I can spend 15. If you were to do that every day, Monday through Friday, at minimum, you would have spent 25 minutes on your job search. But my guess is you would end up spending more like 2 hours total, maybe 3. And slowly but surely, you would get yourself to a place where you are a literal rock star ninja at job search. Job search is not rocket science. It is not brain surgery, but it takes time. You have to invest time in getting all these career tools ready, getting your strategy dialed in, and going after what you want. And when you do that, you get the best opportunities. When you do that, companies want to hire you and you sit in the driver's seat and you negotiate higher pay. And I can tell you, I know this to be true because it's what we teach at Work It Daily, and we watch people do this all the time. And every day people are going, oh my gosh, I just landed an interview with my dream employer. They told me the cover letter was the best they'd ever read. Oh my gosh, I just got an offer, but I'm waiting on an offer from another company. Are these kinds of things happening to you? If not, it means your job search isn't to where it should be. And those are the skills you want to upskill now. So folks, this is where I get really fired up. I started Work It Daily in the last recession. In 2008, I looked at my husband and said, there's literally millions of people who have never been through this, and they have no idea how to navigate it. And that's why I started this company. And fast forward to today, and we are ready. We are ready to help people who understand that their skills aren't where they need to be, but all they need is a little help. They need the right resources, the right coaching, and they need to be surrounded by the right people. If you're not supported, and if you don't have other people around you trying to up their game, then you are not performing at your highest level. And that's another reason that you really should be getting your job search in gear. You should be finding other people that are doing the same, and together you all can win. Okay, what skills should we be learning while quarantined during COVID-19? That is a great question. Well, the sky's the limit, right? There are so many different skills. I personally think you want to look at it from two perspectives, your industry and your actual skill set. So think of yourself as a business of one. We talk about that all the time at Work It Daily. So you are a service provider and you want to earn the best possible wage for your services. So in order to do that, you have to provide the best value. And the way you provide the best value is by being relevant and cutting edge in your industry and in your skill set. So I would sit back first and say, how relevant am I right now? On a scale of 1 to 10, am I cutting edge in my industry? Do I have all the latest information? Do I have all the latest techniques? If you don't have a lot of industry knowledge, if you haven't been keeping up on your industry, now's the time. Study as much as you can. What are the new trends? What are the new concerns? What are the new technologies? What's everybody talking about? On the flip side, if it's skill sets, make sure your skill sets are up to speed. Again, what new technologies are people using? What are some of the concerns people have? How are people doing it better, faster, cheaper? What is the new level of information that you need? Are there any certifications that you need? Is there some software you need to learn how to use? Whatever that is, always be thinking about things that you can learn and skills that you can build that will make you more marketable. And the simple way to know that is, will this skill set help me save or make an employer money? Because if a company is going to save or make money through you, that's how you justify the cost of hiring you. That's how you justify raises, is that you bring more value to the organization. You save or make them more money, because they can't hire you just because they like you. They have to hire you because you are covering the cost of hiring you. So think about that from an industry or a skill set perspective, and then really dial in on building up your value in some way. When you're done, you should be able to say, this skill or this industry knowledge is going to make me more valuable. I'm going to be able to do my job better, faster, whatever it is. And that's going to make or save my company more money. And when you can do that, then you're really winning. And we all have opportunities to do that. There's never a time where we know everything we need to know in our industry or every skill that we need in our skill set. There is always room for improvement. And that's a good thing, because it means we can make ourselves more relevant. We can make ourselves more in demand, right? It's law, supply, and demand. And we can make ourselves worth more money. So now's the time. Absolutely, you should be doing that. All right, everyone, this was really great. Listen, I have exciting news for you. In my next broadcast, it's going to be Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. In my next broadcast, I am going to be interviewing the author of the new book, It Takes What It Takes. His name's Trevor Moawad. And this book is incredible. And we are going to be talking about the concept of neutral thinking. So continuing on with today's conversation, he is a performance expert. Like he trains the minds of some of the most famous athletes that you know, like Russell Wilson, the quarterback of the Seahawks. So my sports enthusiasts, you know what I'm talking about. But he's coached so many different people in businesses, in sports. And he's going to talk about this concept of neutral thinking and how powerful it is to develop it as a skill set. So come back Come back Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern for a really amazing interview with the author of It Takes What It Takes, Trevor Moawad. You're going to love it. I promise you. Make sure that you're following me so you can get the instant notifications. That way you can join in on the conversation. And of course, just want to mention one more time, if you have time on your hands right now and you really want to start to build up your job search and your career development skills, now's the time to go listen to the JT Talks Jobs podcast. Go over and check it out. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all the major outlets. JT Talks Jobs, you'll find it. We've already got 4 episodes up and counting. Would love for you to listen in. It's your way to stay motivated and dialed in right now. Also would love it if you'd give it a review, hopefully a 5-star review. Be so grateful for you to participate in that as well. All right, team? Okay, thank you again for stopping by. I loved all your questions. I hope you found today's session helpful. We'll see you next time. And remember, if you want to win, you got to work it daily.